You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
Welcome back to the Asians in Hockey podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Nate Nikau. Before we drop the puck on today's episode, I've got a couple favors to ask of you. First off, if you've enjoyed what you've heard from us thus far, I would love it if you could post a quick 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This is honestly the best way to get the word out about the show and to help us cultivate our audience. Second, if you'd like to help out with some of the production and operating costs, you can do that through buymeacoffee.com. Just visit coffee/AsiansInHockey, that's coff.ee/AsiansInHockey, to make a donation. Now, to reiterate, I promise to never charge a subscription fee for the podcast, and I'm just grateful to you for listening. But if you would like to go above and beyond and give me a hand with production, that would be much appreciated. Either way, thank you so much for your support. Last summer, I launched a website for the show, AsiansInHockey.com. Over there, you can listen to the podcast directly in your browser, check out links to some collected resources such as Asian Hockey Card Collection, curated by our contributing producer Chris Wu, and the online periodical Hockey in Society, edited by friend of the show, Courtney Cito. You can also write a review of the show on the website, as well as leave me a voice note. If you're interested in dropping me a line, I would love to hear from you. Speaking of voice notes, I'm looking to collect sound bites from Asian hockey fans talking about their favorite teams. And if you're interested in sharing your story with me, please feel free to record a voice note on the website. I just might feature your story in an upcoming episode. I'll be adding more stuff to the website over the course of the season, so please be sure to visit often. Once again, you can find the site at AsiansInHockey.com. For today's episode, I'm joined by Kelley and Jenny Lee-Gilmore. Kelley is a professor and Canada Research Chair on the Faculty of Health Sciences at Simon Fraser University in Greater Vancouver and is a member of the She Plays Hockey Committee, an initiative of Canlin Sports. Jenny is Kelley's daughter and is an accomplished filmmaker who has produced and directed a number of films, including 2 hockey films, Breakaway and Overtime, both of which tell her mom's story, one through a fictionalized retelling and the other through documentary. Both Kelley and Jenny are hockey players, and as you'll hear in our conversation, their connection to the sport runs pretty deep. I highly recommend checking out both films, and I'll leave links in the show notes for you to watch them online. They are a must-watch for any hockey fan. Now, we focused most of our conversation on Jenny's documentary Overtime, which stars Kelley and her hockey teammates, and that is coming up right after this.
Life gets a little crazy sometimes. Sometimes it's confusing, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's beautiful, and sometimes it can just piss us off. Enter First of All Podcast. It's a safe space for real conversations about the things that we all struggle with, celebrate, contemplate, and work through in our daily lives. I'm your host, Mindy Chang. I'm an actor, filmmaker, and entrepreneur with a colorful background, a full life, and brilliant friends who I love to unpack life with to share with all of you. They are everyday people like you and me, ranging from award-winning artists, cultural icons, powerful CEOs, my hilarious childhood friends, and even my mom. Tune in for honest conversations on mental health, dating, sex, family, career, culture, and everything in between. Listen to First of All wherever you find podcasts, part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.
Today, I am joined by 2 guests, a mother-daughter pair, Jenny and Kelley Lee-Gilmore. Kelley is professor and Canada Research Chair, Faculty of Health Sciences at Simon Fraser University, and also a hockey player whose current teams include the BC Wolfpack. She is a former coach and a member of She Plays Hockey Committee, Canlin Sports. And Jenny is a filmmaker who is based in Vancouver and has directed documentaries like TELUS Originals Overtime, which we will be talking about today, and CBC's Little Miss Sleepy. Jenny is herself also a former hockey player, which is part of why we have her on the show today. So I want to thank both of you for joining me, and welcome to the Asians in Hockey podcast.
Thanks, Nate. It's great to join you today.
Thanks for having us.
So it is an honor to have you on. My wife and I watched your documentary titled Overtime, and we both were kind of in tears by the end of it. It was so sweet and moving and touching, and we'll dive into that a little bit as we go through this conversation. So Jenny, I'm going to point the microphone over at you for the first few questions. And we're going to start off with your short called Breakaway, which you based on your mother's life, and then the full-time documentary Overtime. So what did you discover in the process of moving from scripted short to capturing real unfolding moments on the ice and at home?
Yeah, so I'll start with Breakaway. So for those who haven't seen it, it's a short narrative film about a young girl who's growing up in the 1970s. And she's Chinese Canadian and really wants to play hockey. But of course, no girls play and no Asian people play at the time. So it's a very cute coming of age film inspired by my mom's childhood. So with narrative, you can kind of take some creative liberties in terms of how you tell the story, who the character is. But with documentary, it's very different. So with Overtime, my mom is the main character. And it's completely truthful and factual to her life. But I will say there's not actually, I found much of a difference in prepping for them. I would say the commonality with both of them is that we had to shoot in ice rinks. And shooting in ice rinks is really hard because, one, there's usually other players there who are on a separate rink if there's multiple rinks, making a lot of noise. So in narrative, you hope to control the environment of the lighting and the sound, which you don't often get to do. And it's really hard to light a big ice rink on a student budget. Mm-hmm. But what was great about Overtime is because we couldn't control any of that, we were just shooting games as they unfolded in the tournament. There was a bit of more liberty to kind of accept that, okay, maybe sometimes the lighting will be really harsh or we'll have to shoot through the netting of the ice rink. So in that sense, it was a little easier. Yeah, I think that answered your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that did. And that is fascinating. I've spent a few semesters in undergrad in film and video production, and then I'm doing my master's in digital media and communications, and I do find that fascinating difference between scripted and of course capturing a documentary where you don't have necessarily the same considerations, but I never really thought about it in terms of hockey. And yeah, like the control that you would want to have in an ice rink when you're doing scripted versus just capturing what's happening in a documentary. So that is fascinating. That's really interesting.
Something to add with that was in Overtime, the documentary, we did end up shooting with 2 cameras. Not doing the short film. And that's purely because there was so much action happening that we had one camera doing a wide of the whole ice rink and following the play. And then one camera either on the bench or doing close-ups of my mom or some of the teammates. So that made it a lot easier just to try and get as much coverage as possible.
Of course. Yeah. And things are just happening in real time that's not repeatable. Whereas in scripted, things could be potentially repeatable. You can do multiple takes. Speaking specifically about Overtime, in that documentary, your whole family is present. what were some of the creative challenges or rewards that came from shooting an emotionally rich, quote unquote, family trip rather than a traditional documentary where you might be a little bit more removed from the subject matter?
Yeah, there were pros and cons with it being my personal family. I mean, the pros is that I already knew my family and I knew my mom so well that the kind of maybe pre-interview stage you would do with a subject, you'd have to do a lot more research and build that rapport. Whereas obviously my mom and I have that already. And I also felt very in tune with how she was feeling on the day in terms of, how are the questions going? How is she feeling? Is she nervous? Does she not want to talk about something? So that was great to have that history of our relationship. And then it's just so special to have both my brother and dad be in the film, but also my dad was taking pictures, like photographs on set, to just share that whole experience with them is really amazing because I often work in a bubble in film and I'll tell them about things after or send them photos to have them invited into that world and be part of it is something really special and something we can watch back on, I think, as a family and hopefully one day show future generations. And I'm really proud of what we created together.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely would be in your shoes. It's quite the accomplishment, and also just an incredible little time capsule of your family in those moments. Elsewhere, you have mentioned that funding came through TELUS Originals just before the tournament, and then COVID delays provided some extra prep time. How did these timing shifts shape your narrative direction or perhaps thematic goals?
I don't know if it necessarily affected the narrative or the theme, but it definitely wouldn't have been possible if all these things didn't align. Firstly, with the games being delayed because of COVID, so that gave me some extra time to then go out and secure funding. But it all happened very quickly, where I think, if I remember correctly, it's been a few years now, but in the spring I applied for this funding, and that's the only time they take pitches is in this window. And of course, the games were happening later that summer. So if we didn't get the funding, we wouldn't have made the film. So the fact that everything aligned within that span of a few months was really amazing. Not to be.
Very cool. So originally, you had mentioned that you saw the film speaking mainly to older female players, but then discovered that its resonance was far broader. How has audience feedback surprised or perhaps informed your vision for future projects?
It's been really lovely to see how many people have connected with the film. Like you said, I thought, okay, it would be women of a certain demographic, of a certain maybe racial background. But I think my mom has experienced this too. We've had so many people come up to us, not only in the hockey community, but anyone who's ever really felt like maybe they've had a dream that was out of reach or wanted to do something that was against the norm or something that they wouldn't usually do. They've really connected with that. And I think also anyone with a family, like a lot of people have commented on the mother-daughter relationship, the family aspect. And it's really beautiful to see how many people have seen themselves in the film that we didn't expect.
I'm going to go a little bit off of my own script here, and I'm curious that, talking about the family aspect as well and the mother-daughter relationship, what was it like for you to be simultaneously directing this project and making appearances on the other side of the camera?
It was a challenge. I wasn't sure at first how to kind of divide my time, because as a director, you want to be present with your subject. So that's my mom. And I wanted to make sure she had everything she needed and she was taken care of. But then I wanted to do that for the crew as well and make sure they knew what was happening. And then when I was on camera, I was also worried about that. And a lot of the time I tried to avoid being on camera. And I'm so happy that we ended up inserting clips of me in the film, because I think that's one of the special storylines. It was definitely wearing many hats, but I think that's what makes the project unique, because I was so close to the story.
Yeah, and I think building on that as well, I'm curious, as a Chinese Canadian daughter telling your mother's story, how conscious were you of navigating both cultural and generational identity on screen?
Mhm. I think I'm not sure if it was something I thought of at the forefront of every day when we were making the film. It was definitely a overarching theme of this is why I want to tell the story, my mom's stories, because one, I've never heard a story like this. Two, I think representation
Mm.
is so important, and that's something both my mom and I didn't have, especially in the hockey world. Um, I was more specifically focused on the day of honoring my mom, whether that was, I was thinking about the more larger themes. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to make sure that I was telling my mom's story in a way that we could both be proud of.
Mm. Yeah. So, um, your your mom had said that she trusted that you would never make her look bad. How did you maintain that balance between candor and honesty and a care for your mother's desire to quote unquote not look bad on film?
Firstly, I don't think I could have made her look bad. She didn't do anything that would, have to footage kept in the vault. But
Right.
it was definitely, I wanted to show all aspects of her, of the person I know as my mom, as a professor, as a research chair, as a hockey player. There's a lot of
Mm.
different facets, and I wanted to keep the moments of her being nervous, of being emotional and vulnerable, of being aggressive. I think those are all things I wanted to keep in the documentary. Um, but I think, or I hope she knew that. And then on set, we knew that if a conversation went a certain way that she didn't want to, there was no pressure to continue that. We could always stop. And I think in any documentary, you want to do right by your subjects.
Mhm.
And often you show subjects early cuts of the film. I didn't do that. I wanted to wait until the film was done. If my mom had an issue with any of the things that were in the film in the end, we would have changed it.
Mhm.
But I think I knew her well enough that I trusted my own judgment of what I felt
Mm.
she would approve of.
Yeah, and that's such a unique opportunity that you had to be able to work on a film in this manner. So I'm gonna take the microphone and I'm gonna pass it to Kelley for the next set of questions. So Kelley, you've shared that you loved hockey as a child, and as we were mentioning at the onset, as Jenny mentioned in her relation to her earlier project. You mentioned that you loved hockey as a child, but as an Asian girl during the 1970s, the opportunity to play just wasn't there. Could you take us back to what that was like, what it felt like to love the game, but not be able to find a way into it?
Yeah, great question. I'll try. I was 10 years old when I
Mm.
really fell hard for hockey. And, like so many Canadian, probably American kids as well, it was the iconic 1972 Canada Russia Summit Series that really
Mm.
hooked me in. And I remember our class watching the final game. It was beamed in from Russia. I remember everyone gathering around a TV that was perched on an AV cart. And the game was unbelievably tense, as everybody knows. The series, it was really pure emotion when we felt when Paul Henderson scored, and it was very iconic. Everyone erupted with joy, of course, that
Mm.
Canada had won. That's what I remember most. So I fell in love with hockey at that particular moment. But yes, of course, I was not quite like other Canadian kids as well, because I'm Chinese and I was a little girl. I don't remember knowing any other Chinese girls my age who actually even liked hockey. So I already knew I was quite different. There were no girls really that I knew, and I don't think there was in BC playing hockey in 1972. I wasn't aware of that, and it didn't even cross my mind at the time that it was a possibility. Um, So what did that feel like? Well, my parents, they grew up at a time in the 1930s, 1940s, where certain parts of Canadian society were closed to them. They couldn't sit at the front of transit buses. They could not go into public swimming pools with the general public. Some restaurants outside of Chinatown wouldn't allow them to enter and so on. So there were a lot of no-go areas. And, even some of those no-go areas were legislated by government. Chinese people couldn't go into certain professions, for example. So I grew up with those stories, and I do remember thinking, there's some parts of this society that are just off limits to Chinese people. And I guess I kind of internalized or normalized that in my mind, and hockey was a part of that. So how I dealt with that, I remember just retreating into my imagination. So I would daydream a lot about playing. I would listen to the radio a lot. So there was the Canucks games in the early 1970s when they joined the NHL. So I used to listen to CKNW radio with, I remember the guys, I can hear their voices now, Jim Robson, Tom Larscheid doing play-by-play. And it was from the Coliseum, which just happened to be about 5 blocks from my house, from where we lived in East Van. So it was very close, but of course could have been, it was so far away because we would never go to a game. We never had that kind of money. But I would imagine myself being those players. And there was one player I still remember, Bobby Lalonde, who was the smallest player in the league. So I think I identified with him because I was almost the same height. And I remember thinking about rushing up the ice, and scoring. So I imagine myself getting into scraps and things like that. So, so that's the way I remember dealing with it. I did go to public skating a lot, and that was another way of, I guess, kind of playing out my imagination. And it's slightly embarrassing in that, so you know how you go to public skating and you just skate round and round and then you go back the other way. And I remember getting a pair of hockey skates in it was some thrift store. I remember feeling really proud of wearing them at public skating. And and this is the embarrassing part, I used to pretend I was straddling the blue line when I was going around skating around. And then I would, dash in towards the crease as if I was a hockey player. And I'm pretty sure I looked pretty odd doing that. You're supposed to skate, you're supposed to stay in that sequence of skating. So I remember that was my way of kind of pretending I was playing. I felt as close as I could get to playing hockey. But those are the ways I kind of played it out in my imagination.
So I think I read somewhere that you actually began playing hockey in 1980. And that was at a time when it's still wasn't a sport that many Asian women played, if any at all. What pushed you to lace up the skates despite all of those barriers? Like to actually get out there, put on the gear, grab a stick, and skate out there?
Yeah, that was such a big moment for me. Up to that point, I always still, thought about playing, but never really thought it was reality. I was a super fan of the Montreal Canadiens, so I really like your hat. I was a student of the game. I used to watch and knew all the lines, the formations that Scotty Bowman would put together. So in 1980, though, there's 2 things that changed. One was that my parents were divorced by that time. And my older brother was no longer living with us. And he was the one that really controlled what I did and what I could do and what I couldn't do. And so that was gone. And then the second was finances. I saved a lot of money during full-time work in the summer. I was saving for university and I managed to do that. But after paying for tuition and books and, everything else, I had a little bit of money left over, and I thought, this is my time to, maybe put it towards something I would enjoy. And I remember hearing that the Kitsilano Kanakas, which is a team in the west side of Vancouver, was starting a B team, and they were trying to welcome new players. And so I don't know how I got equipment. I think I bought some used equipment from one of the players, and another player gave me a ride to the really early morning hockey practices. It's one thing I learned right away. And that was my start. And I remember being really bad when I first started. I thought I would be better. I could skate around and around, of course, but I couldn't, do anything with stick handling. But yeah, looking back, I guess I took fate in my own hands. My parents were not going to allow me. My brother was out of the picture, and I just made it happen. And I guess that's what I learned is that, you got to kind of see an opportunity and then you just go for it. I'm not looking back. I'm not sure how I juggled it all. I was a full-time student and I was working part-time, but hockey was so important to me. I somehow fit it into my life.
Wow, that's incredible. I do want to take note of the year 1980 because as an American myself, that's an important year for us. And then you were mentioning the Summit Series in 1972, and I'm aware of that only because of my obsession with the Canadian side of the game. Hence the hat. And lucky enough, my fandom is what introduced me to my wife, who's from Montreal. But I do want to make mention that of the fact that our audience is pretty heavily American. We do have probably about 25 to 30% Canadian audience and closer to 70 something percent American. So I don't know that the American audience would be quite as familiar with the 1972 Summit Series, but it is worth looking into. There is a whole, I guess, docudrama or something along those lines. I do have it on DVD. It's like a 6-episode or 8-episode biopic, not biopic, but like docudrama, as it were, kind of depicting that whole series that is, in my opinion, on par with the Disney Miracle movie, and is in some ways a little bit more interesting, probably for a slightly older audience. The Miracle movie is geared towards a family friendly kind of vibe, whereas I think the 1972 Summit Series miniseries is a little bit more grown up, I would say, but I think it's a little bit more, in my opinion, that whole series is a little bit more indicative of the fact that it is still Canada's game, despite the strides that we on this side of the border have made. The game still belongs to you all, so I will defer in that regard. But I thought it was cool to see that you started playing hockey in 1980, the year that the U.S. kind of made a name for themselves on the international stage. Not that there's anything in that, but it's just a fun little coincidence, I suppose. So let's fast forward a little bit. 7 years later, you went to you actually were playing hockey in the UK. I'm curious about that experience. What was that like, especially as a Canadian and as an Asian woman, playing in a country that isn't exactly known for its hockey culture?
It isn't, yeah, and it's coming up. They've made the Tier 1, I think, this year. They'll be going to the World Championship. So, oh my goodness, the UK hockey fan base is something else. They are loud and proud. So there's a subculture there now. But back in the 1980s, it was just taking off. So I had gone over to the UK to do my doctoral degree at the University of Sussex. And with much heartache, I left my equipment behind. I thought, okay, there's just, it's one of those things you do, right? You have to do in life. So I had no idea there was a women's hockey league in the UK that was formed in 1982, I think, by some women. And one of the teams was the Brighton Amazons. And they practiced on this really tiny circular rink just outside the train station in Brighton. And so all of their games were road games because they didn't have a proper rink. And when I found this out, I immediately sent for my equipment. I was really excited. I thought, great, this is just perfect. And I guess with 5 years or more of experience myself, maybe a bit more actually, 7 years, I guess, I was more advanced, obviously. And then coming from Canada, I was a little more experienced. And so I ended up scoring so many goals. I was suddenly like the star of the team. And I didn't expect that. I was always the kind of like learning person or the solid person that's responsible. So suddenly I'm scoring all these goals. I get man of the match, they called it. And I was even featured in a magazine. So I was just getting, this was really heady days for me. It was my moment. So that felt really great. Off the ice, I knew I was an oddity for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
I am unsure how my teammates perceived me. I suspect I was the only Asian female hockey player in the UK at the time. I also sounded to them like I was American. So I know that
Okay.
upsets Canadians all the time, but they thought, "Oh, you sound, are you from the US?" And it wasn't the accent that they were expecting to come out of my mouth as well when they would meet me. Um, and then spectators, they wouldn't expect my face to come out. I take my helmet off in cage, and they, oh.
Yeah.
I remember hearing, hey, they have a Chinese player. I'd hear that a lot, and I never said it, but I really wanted to shout out, actually, I'm Canadian, because the view I think of Canadians is that isn't Asian. So there's
Right.
kind of perception. And I guess for my teammates, there's also kind of a class divide. UK culture, UK society is very class based. It certainly was in the 80s. I imagine it's changed a little bit, but it's very different from Canada. So I was doing a PhD, I was a university student, and they were not. That was a different world to them. So there was again this kind of gap between us. And interestingly, actually, I was first generation university student, so I probably was Canadian working class. But they saw me as posh, and I was not posh. But somehow, because I sounded American, I looked Asian. It just really was quite an odd person I think they had on the team. But they were happy because I was scoring goals, and so I just let that let my play on the ice do the talking.
So you then returned to Canada in your 40s, and you brought your husband, who's British, and your children into the sport of hockey. What was it like going from being a solo player to kind of building that family tradition around the game?
Yeah, and well, point of clarification, we were still in the UK when my husband Andrew and Jenny and Alex, who were both born in the UK, started playing hockey. So
Oh,
I
okay.
joined. I'd gone back in my 40s, and we went to. It was half term. They have half term there, and I took the kids to public skating, and we spent hours there. And I think Jenny, you noticed there was a poster of a women's team looking for players, and I kind of stopped dead in my tracks. I thought, could I? 15 years I think at least had passed, and I wasn't sure if I could still do it. I had really mentally retired. I think my equipment was moldering away somewhere in a crawl space. So I didn't even think, is it possible? But I molded over, and I actually did go back. And because the kids or the family came and watched me play in Milton Keynes, so it was Milton Keynes Falcons, and we would stay and watch the men's team, which was sort of semi-professional team, the Milton Keynes Lightning. They really got into it, and so they wanted to start playing. And so Jenny and Alex started with the Wobblies, which is like little kids who learning how to skate and play hockey, and that was really lovely. And they took to it. I mean, they were naturals. I thought, oh, that's their Canadian genes coming through finally. We didn't have a lot of Canadian culture living in the middle of England, but that was, to me, really thrilling. So that was a wonderful surprise, that how much they enjoyed it and how much it became part of our lives. So we'd have 4 hockey bags. So my husband then ended up joining the men's team, the recreational team. So it was crazy. We had 4, hockey bags in the house. We'd drive up and down because there's not a lot of rinks in England. So you have to go, to games in Cardiff and London and Sheffield. You're driving all over the country.
Wow.
It was a real commitment. And, we'd put them into camps when they liked hockey a lot, or we, attend kind of tournaments and things. It became a real dominant part of our lives. Completely exhausting, completely exhilarating. Any hockey parent knows, watching your son or daughter play is something else. It's just so special. And I felt like it was extra special for me because it was a little piece of Canada, in my adorably British children. They were so, you can't tell with Jenny now, but she has the most lovely British accent. And so, I was virtually at every game, every practice. I even helped coach for a while. I was a referee sometimes when they needed a referee. I was a real consummate hockey mom. And we met so many parents and kids along the way. And some of them, we still keep in touch with. I guess that's just hockey families. We just had a second family. And my son's just gone back. So both of them are really good players. They ended up we came to Canada in 2010, and I was scared. I thought, oh, there won't be, how good will they be? These are Canadian kids, and they learned hockey in the UK and so on. But it was fine. They just hit the ice running or skating, whatever. And now it's been a while, but they went through minor hockey. Alex has gone back. My son, he's just having a great time. He's as if he'd never left. And I'm just waiting for Jenny to go back. I'm still, and I'll go and watch. If I don't care if she's, how old she is. I still go and watch my son quietly, and with a lot of pride. And I'll watch the kids until I can't watch anymore. So.
So now you're competing at the BC and Canada 55 plus games. How does it feel to be a part of a competitive scene specifically designed for older athletes? And how does that speak to you about the longevity of passion?
Yeah, for me, the fire will always be there for hockey. I think I'll be buried with my hockey stick and gloves. The opportunity to play as an older adult is really, truly meaningful. As the film shows. So few opportunities for female players to have meaningful competition until quite recently, as we know with the PWHL. And for our generation, the older women in my generation, this is particularly the case. So I did a little homework, and the first Women's World Championships came along in 1990, and the Olympics came in 1998. So for my generation, that was way too late. We didn't get any of those chances. And so because we were over the hill by then, none of us got that opportunity to compete at any level that was meaningful. So for us, in our 60s and our 70s, these provincial and national games is our Stanley Cup. We it's been long, and they finally created them, but we approach them like this is our ultimate. And so we do all our workouts and our training the way that as much as we can to get ready for them. And so I'll just keep going. And I know that I'm not alone in my desire to keep going. There are many older women out there who either they want to even start playing or keep going. And that's really exciting. So here in Vancouver, I've helped create a over 40s hockey division at CanLan. And I think that's, and it's grown so quickly. We now have 10 teams. It's really heavily subscribed. And it's just a heck of a lot of fun for women who would probably, a lot of them would retire if they didn't have this division, because it would be too physical or too, playing with 19-year-olds when you're 40 plus, it's really tough. And so, men have those 40 plus, 50 plus, even 60 plus divisions, but women never had that. And so, I'd love to see that for older women. And I think these provincial and national games are a big part of, keeping us going.
So in Overtime, you had mentioned these mental scripts that you recite before your games. Could you share one with us? How do they help you prepare physically or emotionally?
Yeah, these scripts were introduced to me by my teammate and friend Gwen Lemieux. So she has been a high-level coach for a long time. She was the head coach for, I think, the U.S. women's national ball hockey team 1 year or a couple of years, and then she's works with the Canadian ball hockey team. And so she introduced me to this because she understood that the mental and the physical are so connected. And for me, as someone who I think grew up with a lot of criticism in my family, or not a lot of encouragement, I'll say. And so you don't really feel like self-esteem is not a big thing, right, to be developed in Asian families, I think, at least in my generation. People don't talk about these things. And so, you kind of I found myself down on myself a lot. I'd make a mistake and I'd beat myself up mentally. So these scripts are really important because you get in the right headspace before a game, and even in your training up to reaching the game, and then during a game, and then even after a game, you always having a conversation with yourself almost to get you to the best mental state so you can perform at your best. And so, the one I'll just give you maybe a taster. So this is the script from the one I used in Quebec City at the Nationals last year. And I've divided it up into pre-tournament preparation, so all the training, then the pre-game preparation when you wake up in the morning, or the night before or whatever, and you're trying to get into that your game head, right? And watching a YouTube video, so you're reminding yourself, what is it that you like to make yourself think about hockey in the right way? So I like watching a game on YouTube that I might call up. It's often women's games, so that I can imagine myself being one of those players. I'll listen to a particular song, and then, or a set of songs, and then warming up in the game, I have to remind myself just not to dwell on mistakes, because that's the one thing it bugs me. I'll sit on the bench, why did I do that? And then you forget. So it's just like, okay, just process it, put it aside, and just play in the moment. So I remember to get rid of that inside voice and just say, make yourself feel confident, forget about the mistakes you make, just look forward, be positive, and imagine yourself doing something really amazing, or, making a good pass, making a good shot, and so on. And so, just keeping it positive is something I struggle with. And then I can mentally spiral down. So these strips are great, and everyone's is different. Some people write them down and stick them in their gloves or in their pads, even as a kind of, like a way of symbolically integrating that into your play. So there's a lot of people do things differently, but this is quite a common thing in high performance teams, and so I really like it.
Thank you. So Jenny had said that when she first told you that the documentary would center on you and not like the team as a whole, you were nervous, but you trusted her. What was it like to have your daughter turn the camera onto your story?
It was really unique. I'd done media interviews, but this was very different. And I give talks a lot, but again, very, very different. I've learned that filming a documentary can be quite intense because you don't have a lot of time and you have to achieve so much. So just observing how Jenny was at work was really interesting. And then you add in the family dynamics, and it could have gone sideways, as you kind of suggest in your earlier question. Luckily, it didn't, because we're a close family. Jenny and I are very close, and we try to be very supportive of each other. And I think as her mom, I'm one of her biggest fans, whatever she does. So I was there just trying to experience the moment, really honored to be even, being filmed. I thought I still can't get over, that I was the subject of a documentary. It just felt like I wasn't that interesting. So, you keep thinking, why would that be worthy of a film? But I was so appreciative, and I did need to let go of that mother-daughter relationship to some extent when she was a filmmaker. I had to trust her. Because I got to see her in action and as a director, and she made the important creative decisions. I had no idea what all these little filming moments were. I just, she asked me some questions like we are now. I would sit somewhere and she would ask me to do something, or I would go and shoot some pucks or whatever. And I had no idea what the end result was. She had the narrative in her mind, and I guess I just trusted her with that. Our relationship particularly came through really nicely in the film. It was kind of like that wonderful added ingredient. I was so pleasantly moved by the end result, that she made, some poignant points, but very gently. She had that kind of light touch with the film. So it was an incredible, honor. Really, I felt like a celebrity for a few days, with this camera crew following me around, doing all this stuff. And I definitely wouldn't want to be an actor or anything. I think you also feel very self-conscious about people watching you all the time. But it was good for a few days. Yeah, it was really interesting.
Nice. So I'm going to go a little bit back and forth between the two of you for the next round of questions. So in a conversation that you had with our mutual friend, Courtney Cito, for her website, Hockey and Society, Kelley, you were asked, is there anything you learned about your daughter? And you responded that you admired Jenny's professionalism. Jenny, what was it about your mom that might have surprised you on camera?
Firstly, shout out to Courtney. We love Courtney.
Yes.
We do.
I think I knew she's a professor, so she teaches. She's good at public speaking, and I knew she'd done some media throughout COVID a lot. So I knew she was familiar with speaking on camera, but I was very pleasantly surprised at how well she was able to articulate her feelings and be so vulnerable on camera, because that is a very scary thing to do when you have cameras in your face and I'm asking you to, often relive maybe some more darker or traumatic moments of your life or your fears and very just personal aspects. And I was so pleasantly surprised, because that's what makes the documentary special, is people really feel like you get to know my mom and you get to know me. And that's, yeah, I think that's pretty rare. I don't think a lot of people are able to do that. And it seemed to come, I don't know what was going on inside my mom's head, but it seemed to come really naturally.
Okay, so I'm curious about maybe a little bit of big picture perspective type stuff. So both of you have navigated hockey as Asian women in predominantly white and predominantly male spaces. How do you feel that the film contributes to broader visibility and change in that landscape? And maybe what are some of your hopes for a film like this film specifically, in contributing to the visibility of Asian people more broadly and Asian women more specifically in a place like hockey? And this, either of you.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll jump in and say, I really hope the film will give audiences a glimpse of Asian women doing something different they haven't seen before. For Asian women to be given permission to be their true selves as well, whether it's playing hockey or something less traditional. We Asian women in particular have this kind of idealized standard. We're, at least when I was growing up, quiet, unassertive, not competitive, really supporting your family, ideally small in stature. I was none of these things. I was a pretty big child. And I learned that I didn't fit those things. I was pretty competitive and really like sports and stuff. So I think, being given permission to do that, but other people seeing you do things so that even when you don't comply with that stereotype, we're not dragon ladies or tiger moms, whatever. We're just like any other woman playing hockey. So I think that would be really great if the film could speak to that. But the film should also speak to the Asian community, because I think, we find ourselves presented a certain way in the world. There's still a certain invisibility about the way that people of color are presented. There are certain roles that or places we occupy and others we don't. So I think the film expands those horizons and, kind of challenges that we can be in those spaces too. So that, I hope, is what I don't think that is a heavy message in the film, but being who we are, I think, sends that out in a subtle way.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not really a message that's found within the film, but I think the existence of this film really acts as that kind of a almost subversive sort of narrative in itself for what hockey currently is versus what it could be. If more and more stories like this, make their appearances. So Kelley, I think at some point you had called this film the best home movie ever or something like that.
That's right.
Jenny, how do you hope that Overtime lives on, both within your family and in the larger hockey or film community?
Yeah, I think one of the great things about film is it's something you can rewatch over and over for many years to come. So for us as a family, it's now part of our family archive. And I hope one day, I can show it to my future children my mom's grandchildren. Hopefully they'll be playing hockey if my mom has a say in it, they'll be little hockey players. But I think it's something so beautiful, like you said earlier, it's a time capsule of our experiences. So I'm really happy about that. And in terms of hockey in general, hopefully in years to come, people will watch the film and hopefully not understand why it's so unique to have an Asian woman in hockey. So I'm really proud of the legacy that the film will hopefully leave.
So finally, I want to wrap up with a thought about some next steps. So having gone from Breakaway to Overtime, what are some stories that you're burning to tell next? And do you think there's anything that could prompt you to collaborate again in the future?
I hope so. I mean, as a filmmaker, I always have many projects on the go. I have a narrative short film that's starting its festival run later in the year, and I'm working towards my first feature film. But I think growing up, my mom is an academic, but she's also been always very creative, and I think a good storyteller, and would always read my essays and help me with my scripts even. So I know she has some stories that I hope she starts to put pen to page, because I need some movie material to make. So I'm hoping one day she writes some things that I can make into a movie. So I think we have lots of stories within us.
Cool. Kelley, what about you?
Well, on my side, definitely, I'd love to collaborate with Jenny again. She is a great storyteller as well, so I think it's a good partnership. I'd love to see Breakaway made into a series. It was on that track, and it for financial reasons, it didn't quite take off. But I know there's a hit series just waiting to happen in that little teaser that you saw. And not just because it's my childhood, that would be very egotistical, but I think the story itself would resonate so deeply with so many people about, dreams that are delayed, not prevented, but at least just delayed. So that's great. I do a lot of research. I'm a global health researcher, so I've done so many interesting things. I've been so lucky over the past 30 years to have a career where I've, wrestled with lots of complex issues. I've had a team that took big tobacco on, for example. We've had a whole research project around, understanding the tobacco industry, or now looking at how, during COVID, how we managed to travel and do it safely. So there's lots of topics there which make interesting documentaries. But I think most of all, my first degree was actually in English literature. I somehow really wanted to be a writer. And that's another thing that I wasn't really allowed to do, because it was, how Asian parents are. Yeah, writer is not one of those professions. But I have ended up writing a lot of academic books. And I'm going to, when I retire in a few years, turn my hand to some fiction writing. So I have some stories from my family background, or from my maybe a campus novel. I'm not really sure, but I've got a lot of material I really want to try and capture. So maybe Jenny and I can hook up then and think about some collaboration.
Cool. Well, I want to say thank you both for spending some time with me today. This conversation was amazing. It's something that I will probably listen to over and over again, just because I had so much fun chatting with you, and your stories are phenomenal. But before we go, where can people find you online? Of course, I will be putting all links into the show notes, but for those of you who are listening and are probably behind the wheel of a car, please don't go clicking through your phone looking for links in the show notes. So we'll shout them out here. Where can people find you, either on social media or just on the web in general?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Jenny_Lee-Gilmore. And then you can also watch our film Overtime at tellusoriginals.com. I think it's .com.
Cool. And Kelley, are you?
Yeah, I'm not on Instagram. I've never really mastered that. I'm an oldie, so I don't really know if I do social media. I'm like on LinkedIn and that sort of thing, but I tend to, my hockey persona doesn't really exist on
Okay.
I'm an academic, so I'm at Simon Fraser University, so that's where you can find me.
Gotcha. So I'll put a link to your faculty profile
Sure.
In the show notes if people want to do a little bit of digging, if there's any interest in some of the more academic work that you are pursuing. Once again, thank you both for spending time with me today, and we'll be in touch as well soon. I'm sure there's probably another reason we can find to have you both join us once again on the show. So thanks again.
Thanks so much, Nate. It's been
Thank you,
fun.
Nate, for such thoughtful questions.
Absolutely. That's it for today's episode. Be sure to tune in next time when I'll be speaking with Alan Chan, a former member of the Winnipeg Jets Advisory Council and the founder and GM of the Winnipeg Emperors, an all-Asian hockey team committed to representation and community on the ice. Subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss it. Thank you so much for listening. Asians in Hockey is part of the Potluck Podcast Collective and is hosted and produced by Nate Nakal. Contributing producers are Chad Sun and Chris Wu. Original music by Scott Okamoto. If you like what you heard, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and share this podcast with your friends. To keep up with us on socials, follow us on Instagram and Threads at Asians in Hockey and on Blue Sky at asiansinhockey.com. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/AsiansInHockey. And please feel free to shoot me an email at asiansinhockey@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit asiansinhockey.com for more great content. See you next time on the Asians in Hockey podcast.